All right, back to battleground Iran now, and one of the MPs involved in today's Iran initiative is British Columbia Conservative MP John Weston, straight from the floor of the House of Commons, where you had to do your duty and do your votes. Thank you for speeding your way over here. Let's talk about this, and you were just telling me before we came on air that you are essentially the government's liaison with the Canadian Iranian community. Well, tell me a little bit about that work before we talk about this initiative.
Well, it's a great honor to represent a community, especially at a time when Iran and Canada have such tension in the air, and Iran's government is at odds with most Western democratic nations. It's a community known for its high level of education, high work ethic, ability to look back over a 5,000-year history, and I have the honor of trying to amplify that culture and history in Canada to make sure that the messages of the Iranian community are heard by our government, and to make sure that our government's responses get conferred in a way that they understand.
And I'm assuming our government, primarily Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird, he has been a vocal and active critic of the Iranian regime. And that's
so many turns, very supportive. Most people in the Iranian community, I think, understand that our government is one of the strongest condemners of Ahmadinejad in the world. Our sanctions are among the toughest. 98 new sanctions were added back in December. Many people are aware that we closed our embassy in Tehran and also ousted Iran's consular officials from Canada back in December. So those were all big steps. There are some inconvenience to the Persian community in Canada, to be sure, and we're aware of that, and we're trying to make sure that people aren't inconvenienced. And I think most important, David, is that whenever you hear John Baird or Stephen Harper condemn the Ahmadinejad regime, in the same breath, you're going to hear tribute to people of Persian background in Iran and in Canada and around the world.
It's the regime, not the people, in other words.
Exactly.
You mentioned some of the sanctions that are having an effect. One is, in terms of this election that's happening now, is the candidates are being discouraged, in some cases prohibited, from printing campaign pamphlets because there is a shortage of paper, and that, again, it goes to the sanctions that we're levying on them. Let's talk a little bit about this particular initiative where people are looking at Iran now with these elections underway. A great time to pair up with a political prisoner.
What I love about this initiative, David, is that we talk about human rights in the House of Commons. We hear about it in our media, but this is something where individuals are pairing up with individuals. So one of the individuals, for instance, is Navid Kanjani, who is a Baha'i who has committed the offense under Iranian law of just wanting to go to university. Now, he's a Baha'i. That's it.
And Baha'i is under tremendous persecution all across Iran right now.
That's exactly right. And so they're prohibited from entering university because of their religious affiliation. Imagine that. Imagine if you were a Christian or Jew or a Muslim here in Canada, you were prohibited from going to university. We just can't imagine that. So that's one example of the systematic oppression that Iran imposes upon its own people. And so this individual is being paired with my colleague David Sweet. So David is making a real effort to make sure that Canadians and people around the world know about this gentleman in Iran who has been condemned to 12 years in prison. Among his other offenses were that he's a human rights activist, and he just, as I said, simply wanted to go to university.
You had a poem that you wanted to bring in. Do you want to set it up for us? Do you want to touch it on it?
Well, the Persians love their poets. So around Nowruz, which is the Persian spring, I wrote this poem that was to represent what I think is in the hearts and the minds of many of my colleagues. There's Costa Menegakis of Richmond Hill, who works very hard among people of Iranian background. Erwin Kotler, who's organized this initiative. So here's a poem that's dedicated to people who suffer from human rights abuses in Iran. It's called Persian Spring. Close your eyes and think back to the dwindling snow on the slopes of a land 3 millennia ago. With the waning of winter, we welcome Nowruz, the Eshka of springtime, long sought after news. Eshka is love and freedom. Dream with me, sing with me, candles alight. Think castles, oases, and sweet-smelling night. Think freedom, azadi, that's freedom. Think rule of law. Think everything noble the great Cyrus saw. Keep the faith, brothers and sisters and friends. Our strength is our faith, and our faith never ends. Remembering history will get on track. Persia's best and its brightest are soon coming back. So that's for the people who are suffering persecution in Iran.
I like it, and it's a nice touch. And again, we'll be flashing up at the end of the show, my website, etc. You can get some information on this particular initiative. But again, we hope people pay attention. That's the first thing people have to do.
And kudos to Erwin Kotler and others who are organizing this initiative. I think it's really great to personify human rights for Canadians.
I agree. John Weston, thank you so much for rushing over from the House of Commons. Very much appreciated. Cystic fibrosis, that's the rose on the lapel.
That's the rose. Yep.
Thank you again.
Thanks, David.